be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The shepherds went in haste to Bethlehem and found Mary and Joseph and the infant lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known the message that had been told them about this child. All who heard it were amazed by what had been told them by the shepherds. And Mary kept all these things, reflecting on them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God, for they all had heard and seen, just as had been told to them. When 8 days were completed for his circumcision, he was named Jesus, the name given him by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Revisit zero to infinity. And that's really the way it is with God, isn't it? We either know Him or... if we know Him, we know He's infinite. If we don't, we're dead. And that's what Abraham so much said in a reading this past week. He said, it described Abraham as he was so much as a dead man because he didn't have any children, and his wife Sarah was beyond age. And then God spoke to Abraham. He says, took him outside and said, see these stars? Your descendants are going to be as numerous as these stars. You're going from dead man to uncountable stars. And as I shared with the morning mass crowd this last week, a light second is how far light travels in a second. 186,000 miles in 1 second. That's a light second. I've run a couple marathons, 26 miles, a long way to run. You get tired. A light second, 186,000 miles. So can you imagine a light hour, or a light day, or a light year? You're talking, I don't even know how to say numbers that big. And the stars that we see in our galaxy are from at least 4.5 light years ago. That's the source of that light. 4.5 years ago to thousands of years ago. Imagine that immensity, how big that is. And then that's just our galaxy. We're just one galaxy out of billions of galaxies. It's big. And God is bigger than that. And we get to celebrate that. And that's what we're talking about, going from zero to infinity. And that's when it gets real exciting, when we lock into that. How are you doing? We are. Infinite blessing. Continue to grow in our lives and our hearts. I was driving down the street the other day. A couple high school kids walking right down the middle of the street. And my car was approaching, and they just stayed there kind of walking in the street. So I started to get perturbed, And I came up upon them. They just kept walking right in the middle of the street. They saw me, And I got ticked off. I did. And I didn't, I was just close to them as I went by them. And, I wanted them to feel the wind in the car. And then I prayed. And then I repented. I said, I'm sorry, Lord, I'm like, they don't even care. They don't care if they get hit or not. They don't care if they're walking or not. And then I really repented. There's so many people that don't care. Because they don't know. They don't know they're blessed. They don't have their father's blessing. They don't have their daddy. They don't have their mommy. They don't have that blessing. They don't know what it means to be an heir of God, because they've never been given that. So many. On the left and the right. What are we going to do about it? St. Joseph the Worker. What are we going to do about all those kids that don't care whether they're hit or not, walking down the road? What will we do about that? the depravity of not knowing that, and the depravity of parents and other people or leaders saying no to that is enormous. But the upside is tremendous. 186,000 miles per second is how fast light travels. And we live in a universe that is so grand, and there's billions of them. So I just kind of want to go over the whole idea of blessing. Mary gave us the ultimate blessing in Jesus because she said this, and that's what we're rejoicing. That's what Christmas is all about. In Numbers we read today, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And what it means to be an heir, as Paul talks about in our reading of that blessing. The first part of the blessing, of every blessing, is meaningful touch. Good, meaningful touch. So, in the Old Testament, we're going to kind of focus on the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, Isaac blessed his sons, Jacob and Esau. And what he would do is he'd kiss them and place his hand on them, the father's blessing. And what a great need for that there is in our world today. A meaningful touch by someone who is supposed to be blessing. And by the way, it was Jewish parents, their duty to bless. That was their duty. They had to do that. That's what was prescribed for them, to bless their children. And then the second part of blessing is it has to be spoken. You got to say it. If you don't bless your kids, they become confused. They don't know what to think. And I know I need to grow in that in all the ways. But they become confused and they say, who am I? And what do they really think about me? And there's a good chance that it's going to go negative instead of positive because of how self-critical we are of ourselves. Or there's also the negative part. You know, you've heard that. You're dumb. You're stupid. When are you going to be like your older brother? When can you figure it out? So there's all the negative aspect of that. And then a third part of blessing. So we talk about meaningful touch and speaking it. And a third part of blessing is attaching high value to someone. And to bless in the Old Testament means to bow the knee. So when we come into church, we bow the knee before Jesus. That should be something that should be so part of our lives. And may I dare to say, I think Jesus is probably more concerned that we would do that for each other than doing that before Him in the tabernacle. I think Jesus would want us to do that just as much for each other, to have this honoring, attaching high value to another. I'm going to bow the knee and I'm going to look up to you. And I'm going to attach great importance to you. And with that blessing, another way that we can help attach high value to is give a word picture to someone. So in that word picture, we can say, hey, you're like a lion, you know, you're strong, you're going to do great things for God. Or you're like a deer, you know, you're graceful. And the way that God's grace works for you, through you, to build up other people. I remember Monsignor Murphy growing up. He was always over at our house, and he gave me that word picture. He said, he always called me John the 23rd. I love John the 23rd. The one who initiated the Second Vatican Council, the one who was so loving for and compassionate and opened the doors, the windows of the church. So I remember that. And then a third or a fourth thing that we can do in blessing is give a picture of special future for our children or whoever we bless. So, you know, we can say things that will encourage them and kind of give them a future full of hope and life, like Jeremiah 29. And I remember just when I was training for the priesthood and I was talking to this Presbyterian from Princeton, and I remember him saying that as I think about this. He said, man, I would love to go to your church, you know, when your priesthood is going to be full, you know. And that I just thought about that today and how that, you know, gave me a picture. It's like, wow, you know, there's a future and there's a hope in that. And then the fifth part to the blessing, and if you want more information on this, I can get this to you later, so it's a lot, but is an active commitment to making sure that blessing happens. So an example is there was a story of these kids in this physics class, and it was just a deathly class, and no one was paying attention, and people were half the class was flunking out. Well, they had a new teacher that came in, and they thought it was a substitute, but actually the substitute took place of the teacher, and it turned everything around. Substitute got up there the first day and said, this is a challenging class, but I'm going to do everything I can to help you learn physics. If you need to see me after school, I'll be there. If we need to spend extra time, we'll be there. If I need to spend one-on-one time, I will be there with you. An active commitment to make that blessing happen. What are we going to do about the kids that don't care whether they're hit or not as they're walking down the street? One important thing, if we want to be a blesser, is we have to be a student of the one that we bless, to become a student of the one we bless. So there's a story of a lady who, a mother, she has 3 kids. One's a doctor, one was a truck driver, one was a psychologist. You walk into her house, there's a whole bookshelf full of medical books, psychological books, and trucker weekly magazines. Becoming a student of the one that she wanted to bless. Another thing is physical proximity has nothing to do with personal knowledge. There are so many people living together, they have no idea who the other person is. Physical proximity has nothing to do with personal knowledge. And so developing and gaining that personal knowledge of another human being so that you can bless them where they're at and not know, or come to know them. Another one, kids will say this. They'll say, I don't want to talk to you right now. I don't want to talk. That's the very first thing they want to do. They might say that, but they want to talk. They want to know and be known. And they want to know if you care enough that you're going to fight through that and say, no, I know that we're going to talk, and I want to hear you, and I want to hear where you're coming from. Another thing is, we're not going to really bless other people if we haven't been blessed. If you don't know it. You're not going to know it if you don't pray. You got to pray. You got to be blessed in prayer. You got to slow down, observe, and see the infinite blessing that God has given to you, and then you're going to bless other people. And that's what we should be all about. The gift of God in Jesus Christ. How could it get better? Here's a pet peeve of mine. People will talk wonderful to me about other people, and that's great, but tell that person. Tell the person directly. Say, this is wonderful, this is what I see. A lot of people tell everybody else in the world about how great this person is, except the person who needs to hear it, to bless them. So you tell them directly, and you tell them how you've been blessed by their life. An example of a blessing, and I'm not going to, format this, but I'm going to encourage us as families and as a church to really look at this whole idea of blessing, is there are some parents who have written up the story of the birth of their child, the 9 months preceding it, the pregnancy, what it was like on that birthday, the emotions, and they read that to their child every birthday and share what their whole birth was like for that child, to bless them. With all these elements of the blessing, of the touch and speaking well and high value and bending the knee before, wherever that's happening, there's going to be thriving. If a church is doing that, the church is going to be thriving. If a family's doing that, family's going to be thriving. If a marriage is doing that, a marriage is going to thrive in all this blessing. There's a principle in physics. The level of water cannot rise above its source. So let's raise the level. Let's raise the level all the way to infinity. Let's raise the level of the water by really taking blessing seriously. That's the way that we're going to come to know the incredibleness, the greatness of our God.